Hi everyone, this is Saanvi with the Chetty. Welcome back to another dissection video. Today, I will be dissecting a frog. Let's get started. First off, let's discuss the background information of the frog. Frogs are chordates. They belong to the phylum Chordata. This means they have a backbone supporting their backs, just like how we have a spine supporting our backs. Frogs are cold-blooded amphibians. They belong to the class Amphibia. Frogs can live both on land and on water. Being cold-blooded means that an organism's body temperature varies based on the environment around it. For example, if a frog were living in an environment with warmer temperatures, the frog's body temperature would be slightly warmer. If it was living in a cooler environment, the frog's body temperature would be relatively cooler. What do frogs eat? Frogs eat a variety of insects. What kind of symmetry do they have? Frogs have bilateral symmetry. This means that the right side of the frog and the left side of the frog are mirror images of each other. This is the dorsal side of the frog, or the top of the frog, and this is the ventral side of the frog, or the bottom of the frog. On the ventral side, you can see the four limbs. These are the two forelimbs, and you can see the hind limbs, the two hind limbs. The front of the frog is the anterior position, and the back of the frog would be posterior. Let's discuss some of the structures on the dorsal side of the frog. The first thing you see are the eyes. I'm going to put the eyes underneath the digital microscope. When you look at the eyes, you can see that there is a membrane on top of them. This membrane is called the nictitating membrane. When the frog is in water, the nictitating membrane will flip over the eyes to protect them. Directly underneath the nictitating membrane is the tympanum, the circular structure. The tympanum is the eardrum of the frog. It's how it hears. Now we're going to look at the mouth of the frog. So this is how the inside of the mouth looks. And you can see that there are many different structures. So I will put this underneath the microscope again so we can view them. First thing that we're going to talk about are the vomeron teeth. These two bumps here and here are the vomeron teeth. And on either side of them are the internal nares. One here, one here. And this internal nares lead to the external nares on the outside of the frog, which I will show you. So those were the internal nares, and these are the external nares. They're like the nostrils of the frog. Right here. Back to the mouth. When you look at the mouth, you're going to see these two bulges. One here and one here. Like I mentioned earlier, the eyes of the frog are really big. So big that they even create indents on the inside of the mouth. Now the really cool thing about this is when the frog grabs its prey and pushes it inside the mouth, the eyeballs push downwards to help the frog push the insect down the esophagus. Let's take a look at the tongue and see how that works. The tongue is connected anterior. Like I mentioned before, anterior means front. So the tongue is connected in the front and free in the back. Now I'm going to show you how the tongue works. So I will take my forceps, and what the frog does is it pushes the tongue outward, captures the prey, and pushes it back in. Now this would work much better in a living organism. Now that we're done with the mouth, let's move on to the legs. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cut through the skin and peel it off. And I'm going to expose the muscle of the frog. So just cutting through this. And you can see that on the skin of the frog, there are many blood vessels running through. So I'm going to continue removing the skin. And we're going to see the muscle. So we are going to talk about two muscles here, the flexor muscle and the extensor muscle. So over here would be the flexor muscle, and here is the extensor muscle. Now, why do they have these names? So what the flexor muscle does is it helps the leg flex inward. And what the extensor muscle does is it makes the leg extend. So this is extension, flexion. Okay, so now I'm going to begin the dissection and start cutting. So first I'm going to take the skin off. And I'm going to be cutting underneath the arms and over here. And you'll be able to see that there are more blood vessels on the sides of the frog. Okay, so there is a muscle that I have to cut through in order to see the internal organs of the frog. Okay. This is the muscle I gotta cut through. And make sure that you're making shallow cuts just so that you don't damage any of the organs inside. Okay, so I'm starting to see a lot of structures here underneath the muscle. So on the inside, as I cut it through, you can see that I'm exposing a lot of internal organs here. Okay. As you can see, I cleaned up the frog and cleaned up the skin, and here are all of the internal organs. The first thing you're going to notice is the liver. So the liver has 3 lobes. This is 1 lobe, 2 lobe, and the 3rd lobe is in the back over here, covered by the rest of the organs. The liver is in charge of secreting bile to digest the food. And underneath the liver are the lungs. There are 2 lungs. So there's one over here, it's pink, this one. This is 1 lung. And there's another on the other side. And another over here. So these 2 are the lungs. So let's talk about the respiratory system of the frog. The frog breathes in through its skin as well as its mouth. And the frog's skin is always very slimy. It's covered by mucus. And this is so the gas exchange occurs smoothly. Oxygen enters the frog through its skin, and carbon dioxide leaves the frog, once again through its skin. Next, we're going to talk about the heart. Now, it's going to be a little hard to see because of all the dye, so I'm going to move it to my microscope. So over here, this pouchy structure over here, right above the lungs, is the heart. Let's try to get a better look at it. Okay, so you can see that there's a lot of dye covering it, but right underneath all that is the heart, this pink pouchy structure. Right over here where my probe is, that's going to be the heart of the frog. A frog has a 3-chambered heart. There are 2 atria and 1 ventricle. The upper 2 chambers are the atria and the bottom one is the ventricle. So the atria bring in deoxygenated and oxygenated blood, and they mix in the ventricle. Part of that blood is then supplied to the rest of the body, and the other part is supplied to the lungs for oxygenation. Now let's look for the fat bodies, and these are pretty easy to spot. Fat bodies are these yellow branch-like structures right over here. And these are basically energy reserves. So here are the fat bodies, and these are the energy reserves. Next is the stomach. You have to move the liver a little to see it, but it's this little curve right over here. And you can see that it's very muscular. So this is the stomach. And the stomach's job is to produce hydrochloric acid and secrete other enzymes. For example, it secretes pepsin that digests proteins, amylase that digests carbohydrates, and lipase that digests fats. And if you look closer at the liver, you're going to see this clear pouch-like structure over here. And this would be the gallbladder of the frog. The gallbladder's job is to store the bile that the liver secretes. Next comes the intestines. So all of these over here, this is the small intestine. The beginning of the small intestine is called the duodenum. This is where enzymes from the pancreas and the liver are secreted, and they help absorb the nutrients of the food. And underneath all of these fat bodies is a little difficult to see, would be the large intestine, which is over here. I'm going to get a better look in the digital microscope. So over here is the small intestine, and over here on the bottom is the large intestine, covered by the fat bodies right here. The structure over here, this would be the large intestine. Right over here, this is the large intestine of the frog, also known as the rectum. And you can see that there are many blood vessels that are part of the rectum here. So let's talk about the large intestine here. In carnivores, the large intestines are really small, like you can see in the frog. It's super small. While in herbivores, the large intestine is relatively longer. So once the food is out of the large intestine, it moves into the cloaca and is then excreted out of the frog. So that is it for the frog dissection. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a lot. I'll see you all in my next one. Bye!